gasoline when I do it. I'll be catching fire, gasoline when I do it. Just 'cause you're picking, look down south, that don't mean I'm ever gonna take it live now, baby. You're the man, but I got the power. You make rain, but I make it shower. You should know I'm the one who's in control.
I've been fighting with one arm tied behind my back. But what happens when I'm finally set free?
You got the power.
Don't make me do this.
My turn.
Okay.
Boom like gasoline, if they call me Lamborghini, 'cause I know just what I'm worth. Zero to 100, but my body make him stutter. Stop my engine, push the button, 'cause I'm gonna be coming first. Yeah, I'm a machine when I do it. I'll be catching fire, gasoline when I do it.
Closing you down and help makes you vulnerable. Control. Lose control again, you'll have to commune with the supreme intelligence. There's nothing more dangerous than emotion.
You got the power.
You're weak.
Your hands up in the arms of an animal. Get you thinking that I'm not innocent, but wait till I get you home. If you don't, baby, you should know I'm the one who's in control.
On Hala, you were reborn.
Years.
Motorbike, 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 bike, bike.
My name is Carol.
You know you're glowing, right? Be ready the day you can knock me down as yourself. This is that moment. This is that moment, Fears. Turn off the light show and prove to me you can beat me.
I have nothing to prove to you.
Take this pink ribbon off my eyes. I'm exposed and it's no big surprise. Don't you think I know exactly where I stand? This world is forcing me to hold your hand. 'Cause I'm just a girl, a little lonely. Well, don't let me out of your sight.
fight of our lives.
We are getting the whole team, right?
Oh, God.
What's up, regular size man?
Hey, guys.
Let's do this!
Is that everyone?
You wanted more?
Are you crying?
Yes. This is my destiny.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Oh, yeah!
No, give me that. You have the little one.
I am inevitable. And I am Iron Man.
Avengers Endgame marked the end of Marvel's Infinity Saga and 10+ years of storytelling, and boy did it go out with a bang. The final battle did not disappoint, and it was a veritable who's who of Marvel characters. After waiting so long to see Thanos finally get what he deserves, it seemed to go by in a flash, so we're going to rewind and show you some things you might have missed the first time around. As comic book fans, we have a massive list of things we'd love to see on the big screen, and the folks over at Marvel Studios are well aware of this. So they're not shy to tease us about the next big thing to happen, and they've been messing with us since all the way back in Avengers Age of Ultron. Everyone knows Thor's hammer Mjolnir can only be wielded by someone who's worthy, which is a pretty vague adjective if you really think about it. We watched Steve Rogers struggle to pick up the mystical hammer in Age of Ultron, which was strange since he'd wielded it multiple times in the comic books, starting with Thor number 390. Some fans even speculated that the fact that he knew the Winter Soldier was responsible for the loss of Tony Stark's parents and kept it a secret made him temporarily unworthy. But the truth is that Steve Rogers is just a super polite dude. No, really, Marvel Studios had Kevin Feige indulge in an Ask Me Anything thread on Reddit and revealed that Steve has always been worthy of lifting Mjolnir. So why hadn't we seen it before? According to Feige, he didn't want to show off and make anyone feel bad about not being able to lift it. That's right, Vision. Not everyone needs to make a scene about being able to lift a magical hammer. So apparently, Steve could always lift Mjolnir, but just chose not to until the final battle of Avengers Endgame, and wow, did he wield the heck out of that bad boy. This may have been a bit of fan service, sure, but it was also undeniably awesome, and it's a good thing he had Mjolnir since his shield got totally destroyed by the Mad Titan. But did you know that this isn't the first time Thanos broke Cap's shield? It also happened in the comic books during the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. Not only did Thanos break Captain America's shield, but he also broke our hero himself. Don't worry, he got better. But Cap's busted shield wasn't the only thing they changed from the trailers to the theatrical release. They actually cut quite a few things from the final battle out of the previews for Endgame. So let's take a look at a couple of things that you might not have noticed. When the decimation gets undone and Thanos shows up, things get intense pretty quickly. The trailer showed us a scene of Clint Barton in some sort of tunnel filled with flames, but in the movie, there were Outriders in hot pursuit. Clint also had a hold of the Infinity Gauntlet at this time, but this was also edited out of the trailer. Interestingly enough, Marvel Studios didn't make the Outrider edit to the 3D version of the trailer, so some particularly observant fans got a sneak peek at who Clint would be facing. We also see Rocket hanging on War Machine like he used to do with Groot, and in the trailer, there's just some smoke behind them. But in the actual battle itself, we see giant Ant-Man in the background. It seems like a random thing to edit out, but Marvel Studios has their trailers down to an art form at this point, so we assume they had their reasons. As we mentioned a moment ago, Clint did indeed have the Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity Stones at one point in Endgame. But he was all too eager to hand it off to a friendly face when the situation presented itself. Unfortunately, the person Clint gave the most powerful weapon in the universe to wasn't the paper football champion Nebula we all came to know and love over the course of the movie. Nope. Instead, it was a past version of Nebula who probably still didn't understand the concept of fun. This may have seemed like a random way to move the Infinity Gauntlet around and cause conflict between the two Nebulas and Gamora, but it was also a nod to the comic books. In the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, it's Nebula who manages to get a hold of the Infinity Gauntlet and use it to undo the decimation. Of course, in the comics, Nebula isn't really a hero, and she doesn't do this to save lives. She does it to make Thanos angry. In her defense, undoing the decimation in Endgame did make Thanos really, really angry. There was no shortage of comic book homages and callbacks during the final battle of Endgame, but one of them was surprisingly polarizing. At one point, Captain Marvel is tasked with transporting the Infinity Gauntlet, but Peter Parker expresses disbelief that she could do so alone. In his defense, he wasn't born yet when she started punching spaceships apart with her bare hands, but many female characters rallied around her to show that she wasn't alone. She's joined by Scarlet Witch, Valkyrie, the Wasp, Gamora, Nebula, Mantis, Okoye, Shuri, and Pepper Potts, who all strike a brief pose before joining the fray. Comic book fans recognize this as a reference to the A-Force, who were first introduced as part of the Secret Wars storyline. The team included heroes like Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, Medusa, Nico Minoru, America Chavez, and Dazzler, but while many fans relished this moment, others weren't happy. Critics claimed it was totally over-the-top fan service in a comic book movie designed to appeal to fans. You know, the same fans who cheered when bros Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and Thor walked towards Thanos together, or when Cap wielded Mjolnir. There's fan service all over the place in this movie. The Russo brothers were looking forward to this scene and had wanted the female characters to work together as much as possible. But there was one surprising issue when filming this scene that had to do with the cast and crew. Everyone on set was wondering where the heck Scarlett Johansson was. If you hadn't seen the rest of the movie, that would be a fair concern because it had seemed like Black Widow was being left out of the fun. But if you've seen Endgame, which we're 100% sure you have, you know Natasha Romanoff sacrificed herself in order to obtain the Soul Stone. If you somehow still haven't seen Endgame, then what the heck are you doing watching this video? While we know why Scarlett Johansson wasn't there, you might be surprised to learn which other cast member was missing from the set that day. Tom Holland wasn't there that day, and if we had to guess, he was probably out spoiling Spider-Man Far From Home or something. Instead, a stand-in was used to hand the Infinity Gauntlet to Captain Marvel, and Tom Holland was filmed later on. But you might be surprised how many of your favorite Marvel movie actors were on set at the same time. When Captain America calls on the Avengers to assemble, everyone you see was actually there in the studio. Coordinating so many different actors was a massive challenge, but it paid off in the final product. Of course, there were other scenes where actors including Chris Pratt had to be added in later, but the team tried to avoid this whenever possible. In addition to our missing heroes, there were also some villains missing from the final confrontation of Avengers Endgame. Our heroes definitely had enough to deal with, but the Dark Elves were originally going to be in attendance for the ultimate fight. After all, Thor: The Dark World had already been revisited once, so why not go all in? But Marvel Studios opted not to waste resources on bringing back villains most of us tend to forget about, which was probably a good decision. Besides, they clearly needed all the resources available to bring a beloved character back, because what would our heroes have done without him? And by him, we clearly mean Howard the Duck. Yes, in a blink and you missed it moment, Howard the Duck showed up in the final battle of Avengers Endgame. You might be thinking he was a last-minute addition to the scene, but it was always the plan to have him included. In fact, Howard the Duck made it into the very first draft of Endgame. In order to pull off Howard the Duck's cameo and all of the other awesome over-the-top moments, of course, Marvel Studios had some help from Weta Digital. Matt Aitken supervised the project and claimed some of the more mundane moments actually required some of the most care. When Tony Stark used the Infinity Stones to defeat Thanos and the other villains, the original scene was far too complex. Aitken and his team had to show tons of action in a way that wouldn't distract us from what Robert Downey Jr. was doing. The action had to get dialed back so the audience could focus on Tony Stark. And his post-Gauntlet appearance took some work too. Let's not forget this is a PG-13 Disney movie. Frankly, we were beyond shocked to see Thanos lose his head at the beginning of the film, since that kind of thing goes against their established code of conduct. Disney is more about hiding whimsical Mickey heads and less about sending heads rolling, so they were limited by how far they could push the envelope when it came to showing the effect the snap had on Tony. They went through quite a few revisions trying to find the perfect balance of illustrating that Tony was grievously injured without making it too gory. The team wanted to give Tony a dignified ending because after everything he's done for the MCU, the guy earned it. A lot of work went into our hero's ending, but Thanos getting dusted was surprisingly complex as well. During Infinity War and Endgame, the Weta Digital special effects team had created what they call blips. This is what we see when the various characters lose their lives and turn to dust due to the Infinity Stones. But that just wasn't good enough for Thanos, who had to have his own special visual elements. Even when he was leaving this world, the guy was still high maintenance. If you look closely, you'll notice that Thanos getting dusted is far more detailed when compared to other characters. While many other characters faded out in the company of others, all of those Thanos particles floated off alone. The frame behind him was kept clear to drive home that fact that he was hopelessly and completely alone. Hey, you're not feeling bad for the guy, are you? Don't forget he wiped out half of all life in the universe in the last Avengers movie. This isn't the kind of guy you want to love 3000. Speaking of that adorable little tear-jerking line, let's take a closer look at it. Earlier in Endgame, Morgan Stark told her father that she loved him 3000. Later, when she's watching the hologram of her father at his funeral, which is totally normal and definitely not weird and creepy, he repeats the phrase back to her. It was easy to dismiss 3000 as just the kind of thing little kids come up with, but could there have been a hidden meaning? We all know the MCU kicked off with the movie Iron Man in 2008. If you consider the cumulative run times of Marvel movies from Iron Man to Endgame, you get 47 hours and 48 minutes. Yeah, that's one heck of a movie marathon. In fact, it's nearly 2 full days. There are 60 minutes in an hour, meaning the total minutes for all of these movies is 2,868. But if you add the 130-minute runtime of Spider-Man Far From Home that'll be in theaters in July, it comes to 2,998 minutes. It's not quite 3,000, but it's really, really close, and I Love You 3,000 definitely sounds nicer than I Love You 2,998. So, what do you think about the final battle of Avengers Endgame? Is there anything you'd change, or do you think it's perfect as is? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and don't forget to click subscribe for more great videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.